Welcome back. You got Will and I-Man here from the Block Runner MetaZone in Rovi. And today, finally, we get to talk about Herman Narula's tweet. So yesterday we talked about the Binance delisting USDC. And
we were supposed to talk about this.
We were supposed to talk about Herman Narula.
But we got so spooked about USDC trending. We're like, dude, it may be all over. So what's the point in looking at tweet threads at this point?
Yeah, right, exactly.
But it's not over. It was just a little short-term spook in the markets. You know, nobody knows what U.S. is going to do next, but it has, in my opinion, probably has nothing to do with the U.S. like sanctioning as of late. So
it could be CZ just like trying to business maneuver. Yeah, you know. So, but anyway, we're going to be talking about Herman Narula's tweet. So the reason we're going to talk about this is, well, Herman Narula is the CEO of Improbable, and he had a TED Talk a few years back. Yeah, and it was really, really good.
Yeah, and if you're paying attention closely to the metaverse space, as we've recommended through the years, because of our deep involvement in it and our deep understanding, we are content creators. We're trying to inform and educate our viewers and listeners about, the next big things in the crypto Web3 industry, right? That was like the purpose of everything we do here. So
that's right.
We think everything at some point is going to kind of like, what's the word? Like converge.
Yeah.
Into the metaverse at some point. Like that is
absolutely,
in my view, like the end game utility application layer for all these new Web3 innovations. You know what I mean? So having said all that, it's good to identify the big players in this space. And
Improbable being the biggest.
Yeah, I think so.
The biggest. And so they have a technology where they can increase the concurrent users in a given space in a world. And so in this thread, they talk about how they can get, up to potentially 15,000 people on your screen. But they're talking about multiple thousands of people on screen, which is unheard of in any game for the most part.
Yeah, like if you ever any experience with MMORPGs, like those numbers aren't really like crazy. Because like servers, they contained on average 40, 50, 60, 70,000 people just throughout. Yeah. But these are like ginormous virtual environments and stuff like that. And if you have that kind of experience too, sometimes for whatever reason, there might be some kind of event that would incentivize everyone to kind of congregate in a singular spot. Yeah. And you would always see the technical downfalls of that.
Even then, I don't think you're seeing thousands of people on your screen.
Well, that's what I mean. Like it's almost unachievable. Anytime that was ever like attempted, it's just like server overload. Okay. So that was like I think the motivation for Improbable is like even attempt at like solving that problem. Yeah. Because I think they kind of like visualize it, dude. Because this is like way back in the day, like 2008, 2009, something like that. I think that's when they got started. So they saw MMORPGs were catching on. People like to immerse themselves into those like virtual communities and stuff like that. So I don't think the metaverse as a concept was really being proposed as heavily back then.
Definitely not.
But they knew at some point gaming or just the virtual landscape in general would, get into this. Yeah. This,
finally get to this point.
Where there's a need to have that much interaction at once. You know what I mean?
Right. All right. So, I think we talked about Improbable, their technology, and I guess the last thing we need to mention before we get into this is that Improbable is building
the other side.
The other side through their, I think, spin-off company called M Squared, and so it's relevant to Web3, relevant to crypto, so that's why we're going to be talking about this. So let's kind of jump into this thread here. So I'm going to start with kind of reading this out. I hope this doesn't offend anyone, but 10 years into helping companies build online games and meeting good, the bad, and the ugly at Improbable, we've noticed a few things that are bad when evaluating future MMO, Kickstarter, Web3 game potential success. Which is, there's a lot of stuff that speaks to us here because we're building a Web3 game. Yeah. And a lot of stuff, you'll see that we're actually kind of doing right. So online games are incredibly hard and have a very high failure rate due to everything from a budget to technology, so experience is very important. It promises AAA quality are being made, then make sure leadership with experience is in place. No leadership, no game. Yeah. When it comes to technology, run a million miles away if the technology has not been publicly demonstrated to work with real humans and a high fidelity experience.
All caps.
Yeah. High fidelity.
High fidelity in all caps. So yeah, go ahead.
Ask about the things like operations per second, bandwidth per user, server costs. If they don't have good answers, run.
So already there's like something, of subjectivity, I guess, the high fidelity requirement, I guess, that Herman Narula is imposing on,
sure,
what he feels is
it's like the minimum requirements.
Yeah, like it's not okay. Well, I don't think he's saying it's not okay to build like a low fidelity experience, but I guess if you're proposing to the world, it's like we're developing something of substance here. AAA quality is the key word because that implies a lot.
Yeah,
basically, it's going to compete with the Western gamer sphere because that is like the main demographic of consumers, like in the virtual space. So it's got to be something that is comparable in enjoyment and fun and all these things. But it's not necessarily high fidelity isn't like the thing.
Yeah.
Like look at Minecraft and Roblox. Yeah. Like these are as low fidelity as it gets, but they're still maximally engaging.
Yeah. Millions of users.
Yeah.
$billion company as a result.
So
Yeah. So going on to the next piece, if people make claims about millions of players or seamless world, assume that their performance will stay near where it is when they announce a project, not magically get hundreds of times better later. Bet on downside.
Yeah.
Okay. Fun fact, we can do far more than 15,000 concurrent players in our new architecture, but we will not say this publicly because if it has been sufficiently tested, even at 15K, that's with very sophisticated load testing bots. So we would only be absolutely confident at less. Generally, technology is a commodity now. People will buy from other companies rather than roll their own. That's often a good sign. They should use off-the-shelf engines, Unity, Unreal, and services like PlayFab. Never ever bet on something being launched in more than 1 to 2 years. 3 to 4 year development cycles for an online game just have way too much to go wrong, but buy in closer to launch when more has been proven. And then never accept multi-year technical roadmaps with crazy outlandish claims unless the team is conducting regular public tests where you can see progress. No public tests, no pre-sale, ask for independent vending technology, and then we actually sometimes do this as a service. So this is where we come in. We've been, since we started this podcast in 2019, we've been pretty public about everything that we're doing, even our ideas. We talk about ideas before we build them.
Yeah.
And in some cases, many of the ideas we actually built, like MetaZone. And then on top of that, we're building Rovies, which is a Web3 game. The thing that we're innovating here is a completely distributed ecosystem within the metaverse. So having said that, part of our process is to be completely public with everything that we're doing and making sure every single week we show progress.
Yeah.
And that's essentially how we engage with our community, get them involved in the development process, give us feedback.
Yeah, they're deeply involved in our development process because we made it very clear to these early participants, like we're trying to build a core community because we're, trying to bring the PFP sphere into the metaverse by building like an actual sustainable game ecosystem by leveraging NFTs.
Yeah.
And we knew it's going to be a very long process, and you got to reinforce with the community so they have mutual understanding. This is a multi-year commitment, and we're in the alpha stages. And the reason why we needed the core community in the first place is so that we could properly test things.
Right.
Because when we were building Web3 games, it's not as building Web2 games aren't simple, but they don't have nearly as drastic as economic implications.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of assumptions that need to be made when you're trying to design sustainable ecosystems.
Yeah, sustainable economics within the Web3 game.
And these are very delicate things because if you make the wrong assumption or if you jump the gun on some kind of implementation,
it could be exploited.
The
value of your token goes down.
And it's very hard to get it back up because that's like a confidence loss issue.
Exactly, yes.
And as we know, confidence is very important to have sustainable participation in any economy, things like this.
Yeah.
Traditional game developers, of course, game economics is important, but it's not as potentially damaging if you get it wrong. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, the users of those games, they don't actually have any real like livelihood stake.
Yeah.
Like by participating, like in the Web3 sphere, there's actually the participants are actually looking for real world opportunity in a sense, or like not real, but virtual world opportunity through their active participation in hopes of improving, their real world situations.
Right.
Like that is like the superpower of Web3 gaming, what it can enable for like humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, it's, it is a different kind of complexity when trying to build a Web3 game, just because there's a lot at stake if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
And then if you get it wrong, it's much more difficult to recover from that mistake.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more testing that needs to be involved in Web3 gaming. There's a lot more engagement that needs to be had to make sure that it's, fun to play.
Yeah, that's the whole...
and interesting to play.
Yeah, that's like a whole new ingredient that, the Web3 gaming sphere is like wrestling with, right? So, which is fine because it's so early, everybody's experimenting across the board. So, and there's nothing to reference as far as like what's a successful model yet.
Exactly. I was going to say that. And the most important thing that we're innovating here is a distributed version of the game where whenever... Because typically when someone makes a game for the metaverse, it's like, come to my land and come and experience my game. And what we're doing is creating the assets of the game, the functions of the game, like battling, upgrading, and all that. And each one is a function that can be deployed in other people's land.
Yeah.
So now you have the community hosting your game, and they're getting the benefits of people engaging with those different functions.
Yeah.
And so that's the new thing that we're innovating. So not only are we just trying to build a Web3 game, but it's a Web3 game that's in the metaverse with different economics.
Yeah.
So, which is very difficult to do. Yeah. And we have to do it in real time with the community so that we discover these pitfalls, these mistakes.
Yeah. And like you said, it's very delicate. So you don't want to go into like a full gung-ho mode. Like this is full launch mode until you've spent enough time. Again, just making sure there's not too many leaky holes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's okay to expect any like fully launched ecosystems are going to have holes exposed at some point. Like it's the nature of innovating, but I think it is like developer etiquette that needs to be, maybe at some point we'll factor into the maturation of the whole Web3 space at some point. Like just maybe we should take our time.
Yeah.
But the nature of this space too is like, it's very cyclical. It's very driven by like, what's hot at the moment. So, and to be honest, it's not, it's driven by hype and marketing mania tactics and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of these projects during a bull market, they're not genuinely actually trying to build anything of substance. And that's something I think people are just now being exposed to, because like during a bull market, if you become a new participant in this whole Web3 sphere, all you've ever experienced is like nothing but, good sentiment and like, dude, everything is like awesome.
Right.
But now we're like entering like the deep parts of a bear cycle, and people are starting to reflect like, dude, how did we all get burnt so bad?
Yeah.
Like all these projects, like they seem so promising at the time, like but all of a sudden they're clearly they all scammed everybody, something like that. Scam might not be the right word, but they just couldn't follow through on anything they
because
announced to their community.
Because it's difficult to build a game.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Herman's saying, right?
Yeah.
Because he's been doing the damn thing for a decade plus.
That's right.
So I think he's bringing in some of that Web 2 wisdom into the Web 3 space, which is what I'm saying too. Like the Web 3 space needs to mature.
Yeah.
And then developers for sure, but also the consumers in the Web 3 space, so you can identify like who's actually doing the damn thing, how it should be done, right? So these are very valuable tenants, right?
Yeah. So that's why we're talking about it, is because we have to stand on the shoulders of giants and leverage everyone else's experience and make sure that what we build is according to the experience.
Yeah, and at the very end of this thread, he says something that's very important. But we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, but it kind of like neatly like cozies it up.
Yeah.
Especially for us.
Yeah. All right, so next here is big online games are incredibly expensive. You cannot just slap a game engine, asset, store, demo online. You need to build and run complex infrastructures. Even the biggest studios outsource a lot of this. for example, to our MPG team. Therefore, a budget of below $30 million to ship a serious online game is extremely suspect, especially if a AAA quality promise is made.
Yeah.
Make sure that the founding team does not have access to the funds for their personal use in any way, shape, or form until the damn thing is shipped. If they get rich before they make you rich, that's bad.
But even promising to make others rich is not.
That's a violation of the SEC right there.
Yeah, you should never promise your player base that they're going to get rich playing your game.
Absolutely not.
But still, the tenet nonetheless is still valid. Like, you know, it's of concern if a team raises a ton of funds by, largely just empty promises, not much like tangible evidence that they can execute other than just like what's on a white paper or something like that. That's a huge risk.
Absolutely.
So that's all he's saying. Just so there might be like technical implementations for ways to ensure like teams don't get like full access to, maybe like team token allocations, things like lock drops or like, just different like vesting smart contracts.
Yeah, the functionalities, I mean, all the things that you would need to make sure that you don't violate what Herman Narula is saying here are there from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
But even then, like Bored Apes, they're or Yuga Labs, they're not necessarily abiding by this either, right? Because they raise a ton of funds selling land, right? Yeah. And so, and then they're building, their experience on top of that because of the funds, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they raise a ton of money too. But nonetheless, there's give and takes here. So continuous communication is vital. At least quarterly updates, ideally quarterly plus significant milestone updates are important. Leadership should be accessible on social media. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, we see a lot of projects. They're not doing what we're doing. They're not as public as we are.
No.
They might hold some Twitter spaces, but even the people holding those Twitter spaces, they're not the founding team. They're not talking technical. They're not talking about the problems. They're not like...
Yeah, traditionally you like hire community people to kind of like become the front men of, just basically meat shields.
Yeah, meat shields, yeah.
Whenever things go right or wrong, like, the actual executives in charge making the big decisions, like they're not exposed to that wrath.
Right.
It's the community bodies in front of them, So, yeah, that's not, in our opinion, like the genuine form of communication that I think that the community needs. Like you need reassurance, especially if you're like invested.
Yeah, for sure.
As all Web3 communities are.
Absolutely.
So you need that persistent communication with one another.
And here we go. Lastly, it will go wrong. It always goes wrong. Every single game I've ever seen or worked on in a decade, something went wrong.
Yeah.
Judge the team on how they communicated, how they fix it. If they deny, deflect, avoid, that's not good.
Yeah.
Totally agree there.
We've already experienced this.
Yeah.
You'd have to go back in time about a year or so to see like some actual like real time things going wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's
inevitable, like you said.
Yeah, it's inevitable, especially when you're innovating something because you're not going to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
So next year, appreciate the near impossibility of creating a new audience for a high budget game in 2022. The marketplace is wildly crowded. You buying some land or assets won't create the meaningful buzz needed for hundreds of thousands of users, so they need a marketing plan or a huge brand. Check to see how engaged the community is before spending $1. Discord, Reddit, etc. Obvious, but always worth doing. Talk to community members. In one case, we discovered all founders were MIA.
Wow.
Final note, I myself personally would simply not buy land in any virtual world unless it had some ability to support high concurrent users or some known business model. Yes, I'm biased in this case, but still, or some unique distribution capability. Only buy land when you believe 100%. So, of course, him being biased, he should be biased, and it's a good thing to be biased because he's contributing something large to the whole metaverse idea.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to be completely biased. I mean, we're biased in our own views as well.
Yeah, we literally say like this is, the distribution model of,
of all metaverse.
It should be like widely adopted and standardized. Like this is how you build sustainable ecosystems and like an environment where like the bandwidth of creation is distributed itself.
Absolutely.
So to us,
it doesn't make any sense.
Nothing else makes sense.
Like how are you going to have a land that's a world that's completely distributed to owners, and then build like singular experiences on one land? Like that doesn't make any sense. It should be completely distributed to landowners who say, "Hey, I like this game. I want to participate. I'm going to purchase that asset, deploy it on my land, and hope people engage with my asset on my land."
Yeah, and in doing so, it's also like a cohesive like collaborative experience with everybody else hosting similar or identical content.
Yeah, because anything
in a different geographical point within that virtual world, it's because the reason why we're making these assumptions is because that's what's happening outside our doors right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like on every street,
there's a franchise, right?
In any street of like modern society, or like these cooperative business models where it's not just singular things. I mean, they do exist, but they get like trumped by these franchise models where there's like a much bigger cohesive alignment among all these different hosts, right? Like they're trying to create these really top-notch experiences.
Right.
Because of that, like, I mean, capitalism seems pretty nice.
Yeah, right.
Nice and cozy.
I mean, and then think about it too. If you're going to be creating this metaverse and you can't just leverage Web2 business models.
Yeah.
You can't just like, I want to make a game and I'm going to concentrate on my one little land.
And then hopefully y'all have fun. And if you do, it's like, here's some skins.
Yeah, here's some, exactly. Like, that, I mean, we got to think of new business models. And that's why we're so, biased, confident and biased and bullish on our design scheme for a distributed game in the metaverse.
Yeah, we're definitely sipping our own Kool-Aid. That's for sure.
Okay, there are just these are my personal views. If you ever want private feedback on the realness of someone's claims, we do this for a living for studios who hire us and myself, and everyone at Improbable are happy to give you informal private feedback if we can. And by the way, in our early days,
this is the cozy blanket right here.
In our early days, we would have tripped all of these red flags ourselves. We were really bad at what we did. It took ages to get good. There is no shame in that for anyone as long as they're upfront about their experience level.
Yeah. So I think that was a great way to cap off that thread because he said a lot of things and like it was definitely like the audience that he was communicating to were I think the people, like I said, who are feeling burnt because they all bought into a lot of dreams and hopiums that were never genuine in the first place. So it's just kind of like he's a guidance counselor at this point, like just trying to like get people to understand why you got burnt and like not to repeat these mistakes into the future.
Yeah.
But also to like accept the fact that, this is like a brand new arena. So it's okay to, allow new entrants, like, inexperienced, founders to give them a chance to like actually innovate. Right?
Yeah.
It's not going to just be like, oh man, just because it has to be Blizzard or Activision to like actually
create engaging
stuff.
Games.
That's not how new innovations go down. So
that's why we have indie games. Indie games end up changing how new games are made.
And like you're saying, those traditional giants, they can't think outside of their existent business models because that's what made them giants in the first place.
That's right.
So
that's right.
It is these indie developers, these smaller, think of them as like mom and pop teams or something like that, They're the ones thinking outside the box, and they're going to be the ones who are going to introduce new business models, just new innovations in period.
Yeah, and we have to give context to what Herman Narula is saying because at first glance, if you don't know who Herman Narula is, and you don't know like the story of Improbable, 10-year span, you might seem like this guy is just like, just saying a bunch of words without backing anything up, right?
Yeah, like why should we care, right?
Yeah, right. So he's saying a lot of good things. He's saying a lot of right things. It's important to understand like the difficulty of creating what he's creating, the content that we're creating, and like and be able to adjust to feedback. Yeah, and I think that's why this thread was so important because a lot of the stuff that he's talking about we're already doing. Yeah. And so it just kind of reinforces our strategy with everything that we have going for our projects. Yeah. So that's it. I mean, hopefully that was helpful. Gives you context to anyone creating a project in the Web3 space. Yeah. It's very difficult. Mm-hmm. If they're innovating, it's going to be even more difficult.
Yeah, but and it's important to also realize like these are the times to really keep your eyes open, because the teams that began development from the last cycle, and if they're still present, like you can go into their Discord and you see they're still active.
Yeah.
You can see that they're continually outputting some type of delivery, something in the lines of what they promised, like, according to their initial roadmaps or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are the teams or communities you want to stick with.
Yeah.
Because like whenever the next cycle reemerges, like they're going to be positioned with some actual substance.
Yeah.
Potential real value, not just like hopium and hype.
Yeah.
That stuff is short-lived.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's the video for today. Let us know if you agree with Herman Narula, or you agree with us or disagree with us in the comment section below on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at The Block Runner, at MetaZone.io, and at RobyAI, and we will catch you in the next video.
Peace.